learn the difference between resilience and being taken advantage of. And I think that's probably the most important bit, is that leadership doesn't look like one certain thing. And I think people think it does. Ruthless prioritization is one of our kind of things that's said in the office a lot. How you can deliver news better, how you can bring people on a journey, how you can deliver bad news while still motivating people.
This is the B-Side. In this series, we're shining a light on the lesser-known stories behind some of Australia's most influential marketing, advertising and creative thinkers. We're going to discuss the often overlooked moments, the challenges, and most importantly, the inspirations that have fueled their successes. Because the real growth happens on the B-Side. Welcome back to the B-Sides, where we are celebrating the extraordinary people behind incredible achievements. I'm joined by Ruth Haffenden, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at what has been a phenomenal Australian brand story in Boody. Before her time at Boody, she was the managing partner over at The Works, and dare say she has held a litany of senior agency roles across PR, content, commercial, and social. She is a scholar of the Marketing Academy and an absolutely delightful human being. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
But that, Ruth, is what we call your A-side. What we're here to talk about is the stories behind the storyteller. So tell us a bit about yourself, and I'd love to get a handle on the B-side.
Sure. I mean, you did a great job of my career in a nutshell. But yeah, agency was lived and breathed agency side. Spent 12 years there, started out in London in PR and really chased the emergence of social media, which is going to age me dreadfully, but really came out of PR at that time when social media was really kicking off, and it still had an opportunity to be editorial. That then soon turned into, hey, you have to pay to get your social media out there these days. And so I moved over to Mindshare into a media buying capacity to really understand how social in the paid space
the commercial nature of social
was all connecting. It then soon became all about content, so moved into a content agency and kind of scuttled up the ladder really from there in strategy, and then into general management and running my own agency in dare say, and then becoming part of The Works and being a managing partner there.
How was sort of the meteoric rise through the very different flavours of agency land into running the shop?
Yeah, I think it's probably now one of my biggest strengths. And I think when I was in the trenches, going from PR to media agency to content, I was looking at it and thinking, pick a lane, pick a specialism, is it a good idea to move disciplines in that way? But now sort of sitting in that CMO seat, it's actually amazing to have kind of been across all of those different disciplines and understand how they all sort of stitch together.
I find it's an interesting tension that's playing out. There's a lot of rhetoric, both the rise of the generalist versus the death of the generalist.
Yes.
But it seems to have served a lot. I mean, a lot of the speakers that we've had really well. What else have you collected along the way?
Yeah, a lot, I would say. A bit of tenacity and resilience, I would say.
Can you give me a specific example of maybe like a crucible or a transitory moment that really built that muscle?
Sure. I think probably one of the agencies I was running at the time as general manager was acquired in a fairly big news story and very quickly closed by said company that bought it for a lot of money, which meant I was made redundant alongside 70 other people. I had to stand and tell them all that whilst also silently panicking about myself, my 6-month-old baby, my visa I was on at the time, which was not going to keep me in the country without that job. And really thinking, right, what do I do now? And how do I make sure out of what felt like fresh hell at the time, how do I build something incredible? And how do I pull myself together, rally myself, rally my team, rally the people that I know to build something that's even better than what I had and where I was. And so seeing then Dare Say, which is the agency I built from the rubble, I suppose.
Like a phoenix from the ashes.
Yeah, and seeing that really take off, and we won Content Agency of the Year in the first year of operation, and it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, even though I recall sitting on the curb outside crying that day I got that news before having to go in and tell everybody else. It was actually a bit of a gift, I think, in hindsight. So I think it's just taught me that, I don't want to get too woo-woo early in the morning, but I feel like some things are just supposed to happen that way, and they teach you as long as you're learning from the things that are happening, then, nothing is a bad thing.
And how do you I mean, that is an incredible chasm to have to cross at a time where you're probably feeling like the walls are closing in on you. But how do you show up for your team in such a way that helps them weather that storm?
Yeah, it probably took every leadership skill I had in my toolkit at that time to firstly say, guys, I'm going to go somewhere I don't know where. Would you come if I was going somewhere? In theory, to phone clients and deliver the same news, but to say, if I'm going somewhere and I'm taking the team, will you come? Yes, well, in theory, procurement hears about this in 5 days. You've got 5 days to figure this out.
Land it in 5 days.
Land it all in 5 days. So it really did take a lot of, I guess, mastering as all the communication skills I had and all of the strength and persuasive skills as well to say, come and follow me. I don't know what it is yet, but come with me and we'll make this happen together.
I think that's it's also an amazing show of followership that you've been able to cultivate within the team.
Yeah, I got shingles that week. That's how stressful I was.
There's always a silver lining.
Your body's going, we're not okay. We're not okay.
On the other side of the coin, if you were to look back over that time in agency land, were there things that, on reflection, that you just let go of, the stuff that you've jettisoned as things that just held you back?
Yeah, I think what I learned a lot about myself as I kind of moved through the agency ranks was that maybe I was becoming someone that I never meant to be, and not necessarily in a bad way, but you kind of build yourself this big agency boss persona, this like superwoman that can do this, and this, and the agency landscape is fairly male dominated, and you act in a certain way and you lead in a certain way, and I think it was really a good point of reflection at some point of going, who am I as a leader? Who do I want to be? Is this who I am? And how do I lead with a little bit more authenticity, a bit more vulnerability, and kind of taking that step back from this sort of persona I'd built to say, actually,
the mask.
I'm this as a leader and I'm going to go and lead that way, rather than the way I might have seen others lead or that I think leadership should look like, or leadership that had been showcased to me, I guess, over the previous decade.
What should leadership look like?
You
opened the door, I just walked through it.
I know. I mean, look, it's different for everyone. And I think that's probably the most important bit, is that leadership doesn't look like one certain thing. And I think people think it does. And then they try and do that. And if that's not you, then that's going to be really hard and really stressful to keep up. So for me, leadership is about having a good level of EQ. I think that's probably the primary thing I see in good leaders. It's about being, to me, vulnerable, and knowing when to be vulnerable and knowing when to lead with real spirit and dedication, and kind of knowing that difference. Yeah,
when the team's looking to you to be the keel.
Yes, there are times, there's times when you're in crisis, there's times when you're in change management and you really need to be, this is how we're doing it, and come and follow me, as opposed to those moments of, I don't have the answers, what do you think we should do? And leaning on your sort of experts around you to kind of help guide that decision and kind of bring them on the leadership journey with you. So yeah, for me, leadership is all about leading with empathy, leading with your EQ, and having that balance of vulnerability and decisiveness. And
have you ever gotten it wrong?
Oh, all the time. All the time.
What's your most cherished misfire?
Ooh, misfire. I love that phrase. It makes it sound far less difficult. I know this because I still think about it. Do you get those earworms when you go to bed and you still think about scenarios in your head sometimes? This is one of these ones.
We've all got a couple of those that, like a decade on, all of a sudden just pop in and you spend a couple of hours ruminating on it.
Yeah. So it's one of those.
All right.
First couple of months in my role at Boody.
Yep.
And I was kind of determined to not make change, to observe, see what was going on, and really not rush into any decision making. But also, things move so quickly. The business is growing so fast that you're also turning out outputs very quickly, and you kind of also don't want to be putting out anything out into market that you're not happy with, especially when all eyes are on you as your first brand side gig. You want it to be something that you're super proud of. And in the first few months, there was a campaign the team had worked on before I started, and I didn't want to run with it for many reasons. And I just delivered that news really badly.
In what way?
Bluntly, I think,
Okay.
and possibly too bluntly. And it's difficult because so much of my leadership style is about knowing people, understanding how they communicate and how I should communicate with them. And when you don't know that yet, it's very difficult to be able to play to each of those audiences of you will need reassurance, you will need inspiration, you will be absolutely fine, you might need a hug. When you don't know that, it makes it very difficult to be able to do that. And it didn't go down well, I think, the way that the news was delivered, which is understandable. No one had been in my role for a couple of months before I came in, and so they've been doing an amazing job with no one in the leadership role. And so I think it just felt deflating to say, oh no, not that, we'll do this.
And they've put their blood, sweat and tears into it.
Yeah, and like it was a great idea, it just wasn't big enough thinking, and it wasn't strategic enough thinking. And it was actually, I was midway through the marketing academy at this point, and we had a boot camp, and we had the amazing John Yeo in, who, for anyone that doesn't know, John Yeo does lots of TED Talks and coaches people on how to deliver engaging information and how to build storylines. And so the day was spent crafting something that you wanted to communicate, and I went back to this scenario, and I stood up in front of the rest of the Marketing Academy cohort and I explained what I'd done. And then we went again and again and again of how you can deliver news better, how you can bring people on a journey, how you can deliver bad news while still motivating people. And 3 hours later, I'd crafted something which is actually what I meant to say in the first place, which is all of those things
without
about
all the noise.
Here's my vision, we're going incredible places, strategically here's what I want to do, here's why your thing was amazing, here's how we're going to make it better, like come with me, we're going to do this together. And that's where I wanted it to be, and that is absolutely not what it was. But in reflection of that process, I had a do-over. I called them back into the room and did it again.
And so you said, guys, remember that? This is how I would like to have done it.
Yeah.
Good on you. I love that. That's a great little... thank you for the story. That's a great example. Let's talk about Boody. I'm fascinated. You know, it is a brand that I think is trying to keep up with its own growth. What's the secret to good growth in a brand like that?
Yeah, I would say the product, to be honest. And it's one of the main reasons that I actually joined Boody. But post-agency, I was really feeling the need to throw everything into something I really, really believed in, a business that was purpose-driven, but also an amazing product. It becomes exhausting after decades of trying to find new ways in for questionable tasting mayonnaise. So I was just desperate to be somewhere where the product was incredible. And that's the crux of the growth story. The product is amazing. And as a marketer, it makes it a lot easier when you know you just need to get it into somebody's hands once.
Yeah.
And they'll tell everyone about it. And they'll come back for more, in more colours and more styles. And so for me, it's that. And we've cultivated an amazing community of people that love Boody. And it's that groundswell and word of mouth that has been absolutely incredible. Even just when I say to people, I work at Boody, they will frequently flash me their underpants. Oh, I'm wearing Boody. I'm like, okay. But it's that passion. That's where that growth is coming from.
I mean, what a luxury to just have a product that does the selling for you. And when your customers are selling the product, you don't need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
You mentioned something around, this transition out of agency into client. And I'd love to get your reflections on the trade-offs. What have you gained from going client side, and maybe what have you had to give up?
I've gained a huge amount of knowledge. And I think I was always aware that agency had a slice of the picture. It's quite frustrating in many occasions because you're not far enough up the chain to make change. The brief is the brief. You can question the brief, but you can't question the product, the price, the position, really. So exposure to that of, well, what products are we making? When are we launching them? At what price point? In what market? What are operational efficiencies? How does customer service better serve marketing? Like, that has been an incredible learning curve and is something that I cherish every single day, being able to be so involved and really make that change.
See the forest, not just the tree.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess on the flip side of that is that you do have so many things to be thinking about and so many different levers. There was something nice about here is a task brief that the agency is provided with, and you need to think about answering this question. And you can go deep. You've got the time to go really deep strategically, creatively on this one thought. So, yeah.
When the aperture widens to that extent, I suspect it puts a lot more pressure on what you say no to, versus how much you can say yes to.
Yes, absolutely. It's ruthless prioritization is one of our kind of things that's said in the office a lot.
Okay.
Because there is opportunity everywhere. And I think when you are growing so quickly, there is the temptation to run at everything, every opportunity that comes your way, every sort of shiny penny that rolls in. Let's try that. Let's do that. And so it's been an interesting process to sit and be really considered about, let's do less things, but let's do them really well. Let's test them. Let's scale them. Otherwise, I think a business in growth that is in growth at the pace that Boody is, there's a real risk there that will run away from you from a culture perspective, as well as a customer perspective. How do you keep up the product quality, the customer service, that attention that we have, the thoughtfulness that goes into every single communication, from everything that's what's written on our packaging to how we might be answering comments on social media. You lose that, and you lose the essence of why Boody is successful. So considered growth has been really important. So we've kind of had to do that ruthless prioritization, because I think there's that fear of expand too quickly.
Yeah, grow yourself to death.
Yeah.
And how do you, from the outside looking in, there's got to be this tension, right, between harnessing the momentum but staying true to the core of what you do, right? And I can imagine that that's an impossible tension and trade-off. How do you go about walking that tightrope?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the growth, we're up probably 40% year on year for the last 3 years, 4 years. So
it's astronomical.
The pace is, just to kind of, I guess, give context to what we're talking about. So for me, it's really putting processes in place, which mean that you can then scale as quickly as you want to, and that won't slow you down. I think when an organization goes from a certain size to a bigger size, the processes are often between people. And especially in creative and production, of how people work together, it's people-based. Lots of culture is based on the certain people that are in the business at a certain time. So taking that moment to pause, button down your processes, get accountabilities really well defined, company values really well kind of locked in and kind of lived and breathed within the organization, so that everybody's looking at each other going, all right, let's go. Like we're so primed now, ready to run fast.
If you were to look back, 20 years, last question from me. We always end on the same question.
Go on.
Knowing what you know now, right? You've seen the delivery of great marcoms from, I think, all angles, right? Social PR content. Knowing what you know now, given all of the success that you've had, if you could go back and speak to Ruth 20 years ago, what advice would you give her and why?
This is such an interesting one, because whilst I said, everything sort of happens for a reason, somewhere you learn from everything, and therefore I don't think there's anything I would change from my career path, or any of those sort of missteps were actually really valuable lessons to be learned that took me to the next thing, and probably made the next thing more successful for knowing the last thing wasn't the thing. I would say I would tell myself to trust my gut.
Very common theme from some of the people sitting in that seat this week.
Yeah, okay. I think just, especially when you're younger, you often think, I know this, or I know the thing to do, or I know this is not the thing to do. But to speak up is difficult, or you second guess yourself. You think, oh, I obviously don't know better. They will know better because they've been doing this longer. Or, who am I to say this is the wrong thing? And so now with the hindsight of, oh no, you were absolutely right. You should have had your hand waving a very long time ago.
Yeah.
So I would say
all right,
that.
so trust your gut.
I would say learn the difference between resilience and being taken advantage of.
Ooh, I want to double click on that. What do you mean by that? There's a story there.
No, I just think we talk a lot about resilience, and it's such a wonderful quality, and it's really hard to achieve, to be genuinely resilient, to change and to knockbacks, and some of the most successful leaders are super resilient. I also feel like there's probably been times in my career where I've heard those words, Ruth, you're so resilient. And I think, oh, I feel like you might be taking advantage of me now at this point. It's not about resilience. It's about...
Opportunistic.
It's about...
exploitation.
Yeah,
almost.
being a little bit like, yes, I'll continue to say yes. Yes, when there's a knockback, I'll keep going. And maybe that gives the invitation sometimes to just mess me around. She'll be fine. She'll make it work. So I think knowing that balance and knowing what's resilience and knowing when to stand up for your balance or stand up for yourself.
Yeah, like resilience not at the expense of self-worth.
Absolutely. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yes, I should have said it that way. Perfect. You can edit that back in.
All right, and finish the golden triangle for me, Ruth.
The third one, I would say don't compromise on who you are. I think this probably comes back to what we talked about with the leadership mask. I think if I'd maybe had the confidence or the opportunity to just be myself and lead as that person with vulnerability and quirkiness and emotion from day one, I don't know if I'd got anywhere any faster, but I think I would have done it in a way that maybe made me a little bit happier and more confident.
What an amazing reflection. That it's not about the pace, but how it's nourished you along the way.
Absolutely. Doing it authentically. I think that's the main takeout.
I think that is a wonderful note to end on. Ruth, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome.